Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to Useful Idiots Monday Morning, where we go over the Sunday morning shows that we watch so that you don't have to. I'm Katie Halper.
I'm Aaron Maté. How are you, Katie? Good morning.
I'm good. I want to remind everyone to like the stream so that we can beat back the algorithm that tries to suppress us. So make sure you like it. That's very easy. You just literally hit a like. And then after this, you can join us at Callin. The link is in the description. Callin will take your questions and comments, and that is a free app if you don't already have it. But you probably should if you've been watching us. No pressure though if you haven't. But yeah. All right. That's all the announcements I think that I have.
Let's mourn.
Let's mourn. Yeah. Let's go with our first clip. And our first clip is this is a good one. This is Senator Chris Van Hollen on Meet the Press talking about Nancy Pelosi's Taiwan trip.
I invited you on because I wanted to talk some of what happened in Taiwan and what's happening right now to Taiwan. Let me just state this. Speaker Pelosi's trip, again, the Chinese chose to be outraged. This is on them, not on her. But was her trip worth it, given all the fallout?
Okay, let's just start with the premise of that question. This is on them, not her. Like, he wants to make sure that Chris gets that we're all on the same page here, that this is all the fault of the Chinese, of China. But just practically speaking, was it a good idea, right? There's like nothing morally problematic. This is all a real politique conversation, which is fine. But I don't know. What do you think, Aaron? I thought it was kind of funny.
This is a classic Beltway hack question. It presumes that everything the U.S. does is totally noble and good, and the bad guys, it's all their fault. So, like right. Vietnam, like, all right, let's just say Vietnam is totally legit, right? Like invading a country and bombing, killing millions of people, totally fine. But is it wise?
Right. Was it wise? Yeah.
Yeah. Invading Iraq, totally all right. Saddam's the bad guy. He probably has WMDs, but is it wise?
Right. Was it good for the U.S.? Was it good for our interests? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Let's see what he has to say about the question about whether it was a good idea.
Her. But was her trip worth it, given all the fallout?
I think it was, Chuck, because we need to be very clear that China doesn't get to dictate which U.S. officials go to Taiwan and when they go to Taiwan. As you know, we send congressional delegations frequently. A former Speaker of the House has been to Taiwan in the past. And what President Xi decided to do was manufacture a crisis over Pelosi's visit. He's got, as you know, this fall, the Communist Party Congress is coming up. He's seeking an unprecedented third term as leader of China. And this is saber rattling and, chest thumping by President Xi.
What's funny is that when I first saw this tweet, I saw the question was about China and I saw the saber rattling and chest thumping. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe he's calling out the United States for that.
Yeah, no, it's really important that we deploy U.S. forces, risk a world war, get China to start conducting military exercises, including firing missiles into Japanese waters, just so we can assert that we have the right to go wherever we want, right? Especially to places that are like really sensitive areas for the countries that we're targeting and that have nuclear weapons. It's really, really important,
right,
that we assert that right. That's what he's saying.
Also, wait, can we just go back to that clip? I want to show this rhetorical turn of sleight of hand that he does. He's trying to conflate the fact that members of Congress frequently go and the fact that because the last Speaker of the House to go was Newt Gingrich in 99, I believe. But look what he does here. He's trying to make it seem like this is not abnormal, but it obviously is. So here.
Yes.
But can we go back to
in the past? And what President Xi decided to leave, a former Speaker of the House, to Taiwan. As you know, we send congressional delegations frequently. A former Speaker of the House has been to Taiwan in the past.
In the past. So he's trying to conflate. I mean, he's just trying to put in your mind frequently, and Speaker of the House. Yeah.
You know, what's interesting. So senators went to Taiwan not too long ago, And it wasn't obviously this level of a crisis, but in Chinese media, it was a major thing. And China was very, very upset about it. So that actually helped set the stage for this visit, which they declared to be a red line because the Speaker of the House is even higher ranking than senators. But we are not told about that.
Right. Yeah. And also, I don't know. Some people may not know what Taiwan is. But Taiwan was basically who Breakthrough News had a good video explainer on this, basically saying it would be like if the Confederacy declared itself independent, because the nationalists fighting the communists, the nationalists basically declared this an independent entity, but it's not.
Yeah. Look, it's not my area of expertise, but what I do know is that China sees Taiwan as a part of China. China's a very old civilization, and no matter what the specifics are, what business does the U.S. have going there and trying to basically provoke another war? That's essentially, I think, what U.S. policy amounts to. And especially when there is an established U.S. policy on the books, which every president claims to respect, which is China and Taiwan, it's one country but two systems, similar to Hong Kong. And increasingly voicing support for Taiwanese independence is a huge break from that. And that's what China is responding to. And whether that leads to an actual war, we don't know. But the U.S. is doing, I think, what it can, at least on its own end, to provoke that.
Sure. Yeah. And just I did do my last podcast. You can see some of the videos I posted because I had Carl Za on, who's a very important, I think, a good voice that you don't ever hear on elsewhere. I mean, you hear it on independent places like our shows, but yeah.
Yes, that was I watched that interview. That was great, and he explained this issue very thoroughly. I recommend it. Yeah.
All righty. So let's see, what do we got next? Next we got this is a good follow-up from Chuck. More Van Hollen.
For a long time, no U.S. official wanted to describe our relationship with China in strictly adversarial terms. But how do we not look at the cutting off of military ties, climate ties, immigration ties, all these things, and not say we're in a Cold War with China?
This question is kind of like, let's say you're someone who really wants to date someone else, and you really want to declare yourselves official, like you're an official couple. You're like, are we going steady? Chuck sees other countries, especially enemy states, as like total adversaries. So he wants to know whether or not we can declare them to be our enemies. Like, are we in a Cold War with China? Please tell me.
Right. Yeah. Right. Can we he wants to pin China.
Exactly. He wants to go steady with confrontation and hawkishness. That's what he wants.
Yeah. He wants to whisper sweet, hawkish nothings into their ears. Let's see what he has to say.
Well, I don't think we're in a Cold War with China yet. A lot of that depends on what China does next. And there's no doubt that President Xi has escalated China's actions against Taiwan even before the Pelosi visit, and has been more aggressive throughout the region. At the same time, we have been trying to cooperate with them on these other measures, as you say. I believe they'll be back at the table on those measures. It is important that we have that military-to-military dialogue, but it is important that we also confront and check China where it's trying to export its model of authoritarianism around the world, in Africa, the Middle East, and other places.
Oh my God. So that's one other spillover of this Pelosi visit, which China has suspended climate talks with the U.S. China suspended climate talks with the U.S. So great job, Pelosi. Like, supposed to be a top priority of the Biden White House and Democrats is addressing climate change. Well, China, one of the biggest polluters and emitters, just suspended climate talks in response to Pelosi's visit. And so now they're hoping that China will come back to the table, but who knows? And especially if this is the dominant view in Washington, where they're, people like Chuck Todd want to encourage confrontation, that might not happen.
Yeah. Also, this whole trope of China exporting its authoritarianism in Africa and other places, like they have deals with other countries, but they're never making some sort of like, it's not like structural or political structural readjustment. Like they never have it in like, and you have to have a certain form of government in order to do business with us.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, I mean, what U.S. officials and senators like Van Hollen are alarmed about is that China has influence in making relationships with other countries. And it's, like when the U.S. props up Saudi Arabia or the UAE, they just, given new weapons contracts to Saudi Arabia. Is the U.S. propping up the authoritarian model of Saudi Arabia? Yeah, it is, because it's giving them weapons to ensure that that system survives. But of course, that contradiction is never posed. It's just, whatever we're doing, we're exporting freedom and democracy somehow. If China engages in like, I don't know, helping to build an infrastructure project in Africa, they're exporting authoritarianism. Right.
Yeah. The other thing is that like, climate change is a huge security issue. Obviously, we've seen this, and it's going to become that much more of a security issue. So of course we should be upset about this development, but it's all on China, obviously, whatever's all on China. We got to check them.
Cranberg Timkins comments, China should send diplomats to Puerto Rico. LOL. Yeah. I mean, there is an independence movement inside Puerto Rico. If China went there to voice their support for that independence movement, I think the U.S. would react pretty harshly. They wouldn't be saying, "Oh, China has the right to go wherever they want and meet with whoever they want." No.
Right. Yeah. And if they're like, we are with the independence movement of Puerto Rico.
Speaking of Puerto Rico, great book behind me comes out this month for kids. The Cokies Still Sing.
And I don't think you just need it for kids. It's a pretty book for adults too.
It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right.
I think the U.S. really projects. It's such a projection when they talk about imposing their authoritarianism on other countries, because it's basically they're projecting the kind of gumboat diplomacy or economic diplomacy or lawfare that we inflict on other countries.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
China doesn't care about what kind of government countries have.
No.
Yeah.
No. Look at Colombia. I mean, Colombia just elected their first ever leftist president. And that was after decades of the U.S. propping up narco regimes and authoritarians.
Right.
And finally, Colombia's managed through a lot of struggle to break that mold. But I would be surprised if the U.S. doesn't do whatever it can to, undermine the new leftist government if it actually acts as a leftist government and tries to chart a different course, because that's what the U.S. does whenever someone tries to be responsible for their own policies and their own people. Is the U.S. will do whatever it can to export its own model of, basically enriching a small handful of elite at the expense of everybody else.
Right. So ridiculous. All right, let's see. What do we have next? We got some more Taiwan clips, but we could skip to, well, yeah. Let's just show how bipartisan this is. This is great. Let's show how bipartisan this is. By going to, let's see, we want to hear a Republican on this. Why don't we go to clip 4, actually? And this is with, representative to the U.S., Taiwanese representative to the U.S., B. Kim Hsiao, talking to Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation.
When you talk to Biden administration officials, they will say, Xi Jinping, the president of China, is taking notes. He is watching what Vladimir Putin is doing right now in Ukraine as a test case to see what he can get away with in Taiwan. What lesson do you think he's learning right now?
I think we are all learning lessons, and the Taiwanese people are also learning lessons, and we are learning that we have to be better prepared. We have to be stronger in our own self-defenses. We have to work hard to galvanize international support in working to deter that tragic scenario from ever happening.
Okay. Vladimir Putin is taking notes. You know what he's taking notes in? The RPB.
The Russian playbook.
The Russian playbook,
yeah. He's directly, I mean, this is a the Russian playbook is basically written by hand by Vladimir Putin. So whatever he jots down, that's the Russian playbook.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, there are lessons being learned here, but they're not the ones that we're told are being learned by CBS News. Lessons being learned in Russia and China is that if you make agreements with the U.S., if there are peace accords like in Ukraine, the Minsk Accords, and the U.S. claims that they support them, forget it. It doesn't matter. The U.S. will not respect anything that is agreed to, such as also the Iran nuclear deal. It only cares about enforcing hegemony. Therefore, the lessons being learned in Russia and China are that if you want to resolve a dispute with the U.S., you're probably going to have to use force, because agreements written down on paper aren't worth anything. And the U.S., no matter what, will always be committed to hegemony first. That's the most important thing. So, in Ukraine, Putin learned that even though in 2015 there were agreements to end the war in the Donbass, which the U.S. helped start by backing a coup the year before, the U.S. never supported Ukraine in implementing those agreements, and that left the war going on for the next 8 years, in which 14,000 people died, including many Russian speakers. Russia also learned that even though the U.S. promised the Soviet Union that NATO would not expand 1 inch to the east at the end of the Cold War, that wouldn't matter either. And NATO has expanded right up to Russia's border since. So the lessons being learned is that the U.S., the most powerful country in the world, doesn't respect agreements, whether it's the Iran nuclear deal or whether it's not expanding NATO, if it serves U.S. hegemony, if it interferes with U.S. hegemony.
Right.
And so the lessons being learned from these in that context are that they're going to use force to resolve their differences.
It's also just so ridiculous to compare what Putin did with Ukraine to what China's doing now in Taiwan. I mean, they're trying to suggest that that China is invading Taiwan.
Yeah, well, certainly China's not doing that now, but it is possible if the U.S. continues on this path. I think it's possible, because China will see no other alternative, because they see constant U.S. interference. Similar in Hong Kong, it's supposed to be one country, two systems, and the U.S. is heavily involved there too. And in that context, when you have a foreign power meddling on these sensitive issues that are red lines for you, eventually, if there's no hope for diplomacy, you're going to use force.
Right. Yeah, but the way they're presenting it, obviously, is as if it's like kind of out of the blue, because that's also how they want to present Putin.
Yes, absolutely.
Or not out of the blue, but like or all on them,
absolutely.
Or manufactured by them. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go to just so we can get a sense of how bipartisan this warmongering is. Let's go to beloved Skeletor twin Rick Scott, former governor of Florida and current senator of Florida. That would be clip number 2.
This is a great one.
I think that the U.S. military should be deployed to defend Taiwan if China makes a move on it.
I think we've got to be very clear that we will defend Taiwan. We've got to be very clear exactly what's going to happen to China, with exactly what sanctions is going to happen to China if they invade Taiwan. I think all American businesses need to understand that they're at risk right now if they're doing business there. And I think every American, whenever they see a box that says made in China, they ought to send it back to whoever sent it to them and say, I'll never buy another product made in China.
Okay, you start, Rick. Go through your household items. Do a TikTok video of yourself boxing up your household items and returning them.
Imagine if his suit jacket and his shirt were made in China, which is possible or even likely. He would have to strip on the air.
Oh my
he could
God.
start right there.
Yeah.
And just be wearing his red tie.
That would be great.
Made in India.
Yeah. Taiwan. Let's start it, guys. Taiwan. That's the one China name for it.
But honestly, that's a lot of U.S. pharmaceuticals are made in China, or the ingredients for U.S. pharmaceuticals are made in China. So it's like if someone has some life-saving medication they get in the mail, and they see that made in China. Sorry, got to box it up and send it back. Yeah. Send a message.
Or burn it. Just burn it. I want to see the TikToks, Rick. Yeah. Wow. Well, all right, let's see. Next, we're going to go to clip number, this is good. Let's go to clip number 3. This is Rep. Gregory Meeks, who was in Taiwan with Nancy Pelosi, and it sounds like it was Beatlemania.
Did this trip backfire by undermining some of the Biden administration priorities?
Not at all. You know, clearly the Biden administration, by his presence there and by increasing economic ties there.
By the way, it really looks like he's reading from a teleprompter, okay?
Is something that shows that the region is very important. And President Biden understands, being a prior member of the Senate, the difference between the executive branch and the legislative branch. And so what we have to do at this time, because it's very clearly a tense moment on the Taiwan Strait, and that's why it's very important that all sides respect the status quo, which we did when we were there, and don't resort to force or to change things. And it's just as important that the United States redouble our economic, cultural, and security cooperation with Taiwan in face of Beijing's aggression. So this was a very appropriate trip at the time for the region. And I think that when we talked to the Taiwanese, they were appreciative of us being there. You should have seen over 250,000 Taiwanese tracked our flight flying in on the largest building in Taiwan.
So 250,000 people in Taiwan apparently tracked the flight coming in, maybe because they feared that World War III was about to begin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Somehow,
I mean tracking. Also,
I'm sure there are some Pelosi fans in there, but assume that all of them were just like frantically awaiting Pelosi's visit because they're so excited. I don't know. I think that's a bit of a stretch. Yeah. And the line is basically, it's like, they love to pay lip service to diplomacy. Like, yeah, we need to, resolve this peacefully and respect all sides, while meanwhile ginning up tensions to ensure war.
Right.
That's essentially their approach. So let's hear more about how warmly Speaker Pelosi and her entourage were received.
Taiwan, big sign saying, "We love you, Nancy Pelosi." Mm-hmm. People lining the streets when we were driving to our hotel. So clearly the Taiwanese were very happy.
No
and
doubt.
let me tell you, we were, all of our allies, all of our partners and friends in the region and the other nations that we visited was very happy that we were there.
We're all about allies.
Yeah. There were also counter protests too to Pelosi's visit in Taiwan. So he might have missed those when he was seeing all those adoring fans. Yeah.
He had his brain. The adoring fan images were just seared into his brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as you said, it's like Beatlemania. People were passing out.
Yeah, exactly.
Just so overcome with emotions that Nancy Pelosi would visit them.
Yeah, Nancy. Yeah. They were like Nancy, Greg. Some of them have their favorite member is Nancy. Some of them, their favorite member of the delegation is Gregory Meeks. They all have their favorites.
When I was a kid in Vancouver, I think in Expo 86, which is like a really big deal for Vancouver, I think the Queen visited that year or sometime around then. And so we all lined up on the street and this car drove by and we got to see a hand extend and just wave. And I remember thinking why are we supposed to be excited about seeing some old lady's hand, drive by?
Right. It was a drive by.
Yeah. So similar to Nancy's visit here. I don't know. Somehow I doubt Taiwan was as enthused as Gregory Meeks makes it out to be.
Well, someone just a friend of the show just texted me. I want to share this, and apologies if people don't like this, but he said U.S. policy is basically Taiwan to hold your hand.
Pretty good.
It's good, right? Yeah.
Was that my brother who texted that?
Yes, it was.
Okay, I knew it.
You knew it? Yeah.
I know.
Daniel Maté.
Yeah. Thanks, Daniel. That's good.
It's good, yeah.
I want to hold your hand. All right.
All right. What do we got next? We got clip number 5. Some more bipartisan warmongering. Really warms the heart. And we got Senator Richard Blumenthal, Democrat, and Senator Lindsey Graham, obviously Republican. So let's hear what they have to say.
So the background of this is these two are basically like the new John McCain and Lindsey Graham. Remember, like Lindsey Graham and John McCain were like, besties. And they would go around the world to any country that the U.S. was destabilizing, including Ukraine, And that's where famously there's that clip of in 2016, Lindsey Graham and John McCain, they're meeting with Ukrainian soldiers and they're telling them Russia is going to pay a heavier price. And 2017 will be the year of offense. And it's like, who elected Lindsey Graham and John McCain to like lead Ukrainian forces against Russia? But anyway, so they're hugely responsible. They have a lot of responsibility for this current mess. But now basically John McCain's no longer with us. So Richard Blumenthal is sort of taking his place. And they recently went to Ukraine where they were cheering on and drooling over the prospect of a prolonged insurgency to bleed Russia. And so their recent achievement was getting the Senate to unanimously pass this measure declaring Russia a state sponsor of terrorism. And now they're on making the rounds to gloat about their success.
The region is very much on edge. China fired missiles over Taiwan for the first time. Japan says that 5 missiles landed in its exclusive economic zone. The speaker's trip seemed to have escalated this. Was it a mistake?
No, I think the speaker traveling to Taiwan, as many of our colleagues has done, Senator Graham has been a leader on this issue. He traveled to Taiwan, and the Chinese can't tell our legislators or any American citizens where to travel. And it's bullying and blustering. It's firing these missiles. It's sending its planes in sensitive areas. Is simply a provocative response. But I will tell you, China is watching what we do in Ukraine.
Amen.
And that's why we need to send more of the HIMARS, multiple launch, long-range artillery, so that Ukraine is successful in this next month during its counteroffensive. That's why we need to provide more humanitarian assistance to Ukraine and stronger sanctions. It's not only the state sponsor of terrorism. The president can conduct foreign policy. If necessary, we can change the statute to provide the president with more flexibility. But I hope the president will decide to adopt this stance voluntarily, and he hasn't taken it off the table on the state sponsor of terrorism.
Is this an area where you actually agree with Speaker Pelosi?
Yeah, she should have gone. I'm glad she went. If she hadn't gone, what would that have sent signal to the Iranians and the Russians? I want to build on what Dick just said. One thing affects the other. Why does anybody care about Taiwan? 90% of the high-end chips for refrigerators.
By the way, it's not Taiwan, according to Lindsay. It's Taiwan.
Just said. One thing affects the other. Why does anybody care about Taiwan? 90% of the high-end chips for refrigerators, the F-35, and cars are made in Taiwan. How would you like the Chinese Communist Party to own that whole market? We need supply chain break from China. So Taiwan's important to us economically. The last guy that tried to rewrite the map of Europe by force was Adolf Hitler. It threw us into a major war. This is a land war in Europe in 2022, and the Ukrainians can win this thing with our support. So here's what I want China to know. Putin made a big miscalculation. Almost 6 months into this war.
First of all, it's not true that Hitler was the last person to rewrite Europe's borders by force. Before Putin invaded Ukraine, it was the U.S. bombing Yugoslavia and breaking off Kosovo into an independent state, which you know, anyway, that's a whole other story. But that's just revisionism right there, what he's saying.
Yeah, I think also it's a little bit of a understatement about what Hitler did, but you know, little map adjustments here and there, shading in, But of course, we should drink. If we had a drinking game, we would have to drink every time someone compared Putin to Hitler.
Notice for them, there's like nothing that they can't connect to anything else. So for some reason, Nancy Pelosi visiting Taiwan means we have to send more HIMARS to Ukraine, according to Blumenthal. Like what?
Aaron, one thing affects the other, and the Iranians also.
It's all connected.
It's all connected. Taiwan, Iranians, Russia.
Everything
Hitler.
is everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like the Lauryn Hill song.
Yeah.
Ukraine is bloodied, but still standing unbowed. NATO is bigger, not smaller. The International Criminal Court is coming after Putin and his cronies, and we're going to strangle the Russian economy as long as they're the largest state sponsor of terrorism. So if you want to receive what Putin did, try to go into Taiwan. They're going to fight to the last man in Taiwan. Bob Menendez and myself, and I think Senator Blumenthal will help us have new legislation to give more economic support to Taiwan, more military support, and to sanction China for cyber attacks on this democracy called Taiwan. The right response is to push back against a bully, not cower.
God, he says so many crazy things there. First of all, he says Taiwan's going to fight to the last man.
Yeah.
Which basically means we're going to fight China to the last Taiwanese, which is exactly what he also said recently about Ukraine. And we'll play the clip in a second. He said that in Ukraine, if we arm them, Ukraine will fight to the last person, which is exactly what people who criticize the proxy war
Right,
say.
exactly. But he's saying the quiet part out loud. Yeah, as if it's a good thing. Like they will be cannon fodder. As I live and breathe. Taiwan, like Ukraine, their people will be cannon fodder. Amen.
Can we go back? Yeah.
By the way, I don't want to distract from what we're doing, but and Aaron, I'll take the fall for this as usual. You get to keep your hands clean, but we do have 1,541 people watching. We have 559 likes. Guys, you're not all hate watching, so let's get that number up there. Come on, let's do it.
It's all connected, everybody.
It's all connected. If you don't like it, the Iranians win.
Exactly.
All right, we got to 590. Let's get to 600. Do I have 600? 590. 614. Let's get to 650. Then we're still not even halfway there. Let's get to 700. Do I have 700? I have 733. Let's get to 800. Do I have an 800? We're at 757. Do I have an 800? 783. Almost there, guys. Oh, 781. Whoever just unliked, either you were trigger happy. Oh, and I have 817. Okay, great. We can go back.
Katie, you should get into auctioneering.
I know, right?
I would bid on whatever you're selling.
All right, let's do it. I'll do it. We should. We got to start selling. The people have spoken. They want merch, so we gotta create some merch that has us on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that clip was insane, and we didn't even get to every crazy thing he said because there's just so many in that short soundbite. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Or so we'd be here all day. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's more. We do have more, Lindsay.
Wait, it just went to 863. Guys, I think maybe some excited, and I appreciate this, but don't like again. They don't add up. So if you've already liked and you like again, it unlikes it. So we're at 868. Let's get to 900. 869. I'm trying to train you guys so you understand how to do it. 870. All right. 879. Do I hear 800? Do I have 800? 883. Do I hear 900? 888. 12 people left. Which 12 brave 12 people, watchers, are going to like this? 892. 8 people left. 897. 3 people left. 897. 897. 902. Sold. Okay. Let's go back. All right. Do we want to break down that clip anymore? Or do we want to move forward?
We can move forward because we still have a lot more Lindsey Graham to come.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We got another clip. So we got some more Blumenthal Graham for you. And this is refers to what
you were both just
what Aaron talked about with the calling out Russia for its terrorism. All right.
You were both just in Ukraine together, actually, in June. And you are now pushing to designate Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. The Biden administration does not like that idea. They think it would rupture ties between the Western alliance and Russia even more than it is now. Do you want the Senate to pass a bill to force the president to do it anyway? Jump ball.
Here's what I think, and I think we are very much in agreement on this point, and I think it is a mark of our bipartisan work together that we are so much in agreement, and that the Congress has spoken unanimously, one voice, so far the Senate at least. I think the administration should preempt the referendum, this sham referendum that Russia is going to hold in early September by designating Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. We went to Ukraine recently together. We went not only to meet with President Zelensky, who is ecstatic about this idea of condemning Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism, but we also went to Bucha and Irpin, the mass graves, the site of these atrocities. Genocide is what it is. And the extension of genocide is to hold a referendum in the occupied territories. And I think the administration should, in effect, say to Russia, we're making you a pariah, like Iran and Cuba and other states that have no respect for
So do you have enough votes to push this?
Hold on 1 second. So the extension, Aaron, you know, famously, anyone who studies genocide knows that the extension of genocide is a referendum.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, classic hallmarks of genocide is to have a referendum.
Yeah.
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 And
Yeah,
also, you know, let's make, I like the way he says we should make them a pariah nation, like Cuba. Where does he say Cuba and
Iran,
right?
Yeah.
Not Saudi Arabia, because we threatened to do that already, and that kind of had to back down.
Yeah, that didn't work out.
That didn't work out so well. Yeah.
They didn't try too hard on that one.
No.
Yeah. And look, I forgot to make a point before. So, Graham and Blumenthal, they're both bragging about how we're going to strangle Russia's economy, right? So we have the right to strangle Russia's economy, but China doesn't have the right to say, we don't want to have your high-ranking official visit us right now. So what's more intrusive in a country, to destroy an economy or to have somebody visit? Destroying an economy is a pretty big deal. And that's what the U.S. does around the world in all these states that it names as pariahs, also Syria as well. So, U.S. sanctions on Syria are so extreme that U.S. sanctions on Syria even prevent Syria from rebuilding its electrical grid, which was destroyed in the 10-year dirty war, seriously damaged in the 10-year dirty war. And the UN recently put out a report noting that U.S. sanctions on parts on Syria make it impossible for Syria to import the parts that it needs to repair its power grid. And that's what the U.S. does. So we can do that, but China can't say we don't want to have someone come visit us. But we have the right to basically prevent Syrians from even accessing electricity.
Right. Because we care about spreading democracy, obviously, which is why we need to keep the lights off in other countries.
Exactly.
Disgusting. Really disgusting. Okay, let's keep going.
The referendum in the occupied territories, and I think the administration should, in effect, say to Russia, we're making you a pariah, like Iran and Cuba and other states that have no respect for.
So do you have enough votes to push this through the Senate, maybe with a veto-proof margin, and force the administration's hand?
Yeah, well, we tried to be bipartisan here.
He mentions Cuba. It's interesting. Cuba just had a huge disaster where lightning struck a gas facility and had a major explosion, and there was deaths. And Cuba was asking for help, and Venezuela sent people to go help them. This happened over the weekend, but the U.S., to my knowledge, hasn't helped out at all because, of course, Cuba is an official pariah, so they're under siege by the U.S., which means not only do we not help them, it means we're actively strangling them.
Disgusting.
All right. Sorry.
Someone said it was a refinery.
Refinery, yes.
Yeah. All right, what do we got next?
As long as he is about the American Inflation Reduction Act, which will not reduce inflation, he has been so good, Senator Blumenthal, on standing up to Putin. He supported sanctions for pre-invasion activity.
By the way, sorry, he's talking about Blumenthal like he's a little boy. He might as well just pat him on the head. He's like, as wrong as he is on the Inflation Reduction Act, he has been so good. He's been such a good little hawk.
He has been so good.
Right.
Yeah, well, we tried to be bipartisan here. So as long as he is about the American Inflation Reduction Act, which will not reduce inflation, he has been so good, Senator Blumenthal, on standing up to Putin. He supported sanctions for pre-invasion activity. If we'd imposed sanctions before they went in, it may have changed things. He supported arming the Ukrainians months before.
They did impose sanctions before. They did. That was the whole point. It didn't do anything. Remember in the weeks, like we covered this in the weeks before Russia invaded.
Yeah.
Every week there was talk about new sanctions and the threat of sanctions. And anyway,
we started flowing arms. So I think Senator Blumenthal and a handful of other Democrats and Republicans have really focused on this. And what have we learned? We were told 4 days after the invasion, Kyiv would fall. We're almost 6 months into this thing. Everybody's underestimated the Ukrainians.
So what do you do now? How do you force the
what we do now is
hand?
we go all in on more sanctions. We designate Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. Now, what does that mean? It means you can go to American courts and sue Russia for the damage done in Ukraine. It means that countries who deal with Russia in the future face secondary sanctions to the administration. We're pretty polarized in this country, but 100-0, we were able to pass a resolution urging you to designate Russia a state-sponsored terrorism because they are. So I'd like to work with them, but whether or not we have to do legislation to make it happen, we're willing to do. I'm urging the administration to act now before they annex any more of the East, preempt them, and label Putin's Russia for the terrorist state they are, which puts the whole world on notice. We're not forgiving and forgetting. We're going to give them more weapons and more money going into next year. We're going to designate them as state-sponsored terrorism, which will tell the world America is all in for the Ukraine.
Look how happy he is. Look at Blumenthal. He's like, more praise.
Yeah. More praise. Wow. This is really significant because also now they're talking about, he mentions their secondary sanctions, right?
Yeah.
And that's a fancy way of basically saying that anybody who does business with Russia in any way, any kind of trade, they'll be sanctioned as well. So basically Lindsey Graham is saying we're going to sanction the entire world because everybody who's not under NATO control does business with Russia, including, NATO states in Europe who rely on Russian energy. So basically Graham is saying we're going to sanction the entire world. The U.S. has these sanctions on Syria and Iran as well, and other places. But, with Syria, it's easier to enforce because, countries can walk away from Syria and basically abandon Syria out of fear of being sanctioned by the U.S. and not really pay a huge price for it. Russia is a major power, a major exporter of not just energy, but also fertilizer. So if, say, Africa goes along with this, people in Africa will starve. And Graham is saying that's the choice we're going to force you to make, is basically starving or face our sanctions. And he expects people to go along.
It's so disgusting. He's such a bully. He's the bully.
Absolutely. And of course, nowhere in this discussion, whether it's these senators or CNN hosts, is the question of diplomacy ever even raised. It's not even a possibility. It's not even a question. It doesn't even cross anyone's mind. Like, what can we possibly do to end this war? Instead, it's all about just prolonging it. Everything.
Right. Fighting to the last Ukrainian.
Yeah.
Last Taiwanese. All right. Are we going to shift to some domestic stuff now?
Sure.
Oh,
yeah.
no, actually, you wanted to show a flashback clip, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, so this is from a few weeks ago. This is Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal appearing together at a news conference. And this is where, so we heard Lindsey Graham say before that Taiwan will fight to the last person. Here he is saying the same thing about Ukraine.
4 months into this thing, 4 months into this thing, I like the structural path we're on here. As long as we help you.
That is an amazing statement. He's saying 4 months into this thing, I like the structural path we're on here. So 4 months into a horrible war that has killed tens of thousands of people, fueled a global crisis, the world is suffering. Lindsey Graham says 4 months in, I like the structural path we're on here. We'll play it again. It's just unbelievable.
And how many have died? How many people have died following this structural path?
Well,
we don't even know, right?
It's in the tens of thousands. It's in the tens of thousands. Yeah, I mean, both Ukraine and Russia. It's hard to trust their official casualty rates, but it's at least in the tens of thousands. On top of all the civilians and refugees and people around the world also who are suffering because of the spillover effects of this crisis.
4 months into this thing, I like the structural path we're on here. As long as we help Ukraine with the weapons they need and the economic support, they will fight to the last person. So, Secretary Blinken, I didn't think there was an issue under the sun that would get 100 votes. We found it. Russia's a state sponsor of terrorism.
Look at how he's smiling. Russia's a state sponsor of terrorism.
They're so happy. And he says, again, as long as we arm Ukraine, they will fight to the last person.
Oh, look, he's
so
dancing.
Lindsey Graham's policy in both Ukraine and Taiwan is fueling the crisis to fight to the last person openly. He's openly celebrating that.
It's awful. All right, should we shift gears to domestic policy? All right, Let's do it. let's go to Fox News.
And hello again from Fox News in Washington. You are looking live at the Senate floor, where Democrats have been working through the night to drive their election year economic package toward final passage. In order to do so, they're taking a series of rapid-fire amendment votes in a process called Vote-A-Rama. It's been underway for more than 9 hours. In the 50-50 Senate and without Republican support, they'll likely need Vice President Kamala Harris to cast the tie-breaking vote to send the package to the House of Representatives. In a moment, we will speak with Democratic Senator Ben Cardin. But first, let's turn to Chad Pergram on Capitol Hill with the latest. Chad?
Mike, good morning. Democrats will need all 50 of their senators to pass the bill. So far, they have the votes. That includes Bernie Sanders of Vermont. He will vote yes, but Sanders will do so grudgingly.
I want to take a moment to say a few words about the so-called Inflation Reduction Act that we are debating
Reduction Act
this evening. And I say so-called, by the way, because according to the CBO and other economic organizations who have studied this bill, it will in fact have a minimal impact on inflation.
Now, Sanders says the bill includes some of the biggest investments ever in clean energy, but he admonished his colleagues for helping the fossil fuel industry. Senators have cast 25 votes throughout the night. Most vote-a-ramas have about 30 or 40 votes and run about 15 hours. Republicans have weaponized votes against Democrats in the voting marathon. The hope is to get Democrats on the record taking bad votes. Now, later today, Vice President Harris will cast a tie-breaking vote to pass the bill. It will be the 293rd tie-breaking vote from a vice president in American history and Harris's 25th tiebreaker. Mike?
Chad Pergram reporting from Capitol Hill. Chad, many thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, Twitter libs were very upset about Bernie trying to, get in amendments that would have helped workers, helped people with health insurance. I mean, okay, there are a lot of people like in this chat who hate Bernie from the left. That's very different. People who hate Bernie from the center are just weird sociopaths.
Well, and what happened in the end? So Republicans blocked a measure that would cap the price of insulin at $35, right? Yeah. So congratulations to insulin profiteers on that one. Yeah. And Sinema also blocked a measure that would have fairly taxed hedge fund managers and venture capitalists. So congratulations to them as well. And yeah, look, you can see the disappointment in Bernie's voice. Like initially this whole thing was supposed to be Build Back Better. And now they get this thing, which is a fraction of that and has all these concessions to the very people that Build Back Better was supposed to be a counter to, the fossil fuel industry. Right. So he's understandably disappointed.
Yeah. Bernie wanted eyes and teeth to be considered parts of the body covered by healthcare. How dare he? Yeah, it's good. Yeah. Well said. And yeah, someone said we don't hate Bernie, we're disappointed in him. There's a range. I mean, within this chat, people are range from disappointment to more visceral feelings. But yeah, people who hate him from the center or right are definitely sociopaths. Note that I'm not saying that people who criticize him from the left are. Okay. Ay, face mirror. Okay. What's next?
I can't let the show go without, it's still, this ad I think is going to be remarkable regardless of what happens to Liz Cheney. And that is this Dick Cheney direct-to-camera rebuke of Donald Trump. Take a look.
In our nation's 246-year history, there has never been an individual who is a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump. He tried to steal the last election using lies and violence to keep himself in power after the voters had rejected him. He is a coward. A real man wouldn't lie to his supporters.
Susan, this feels like a declaration more than it feels like some sort of ad campaign for a House race. This feels like a declaration that Team Cheney's coming after Trump wherever he is, regardless of what happens in Wyoming.
But remember when Dick Cheney was the GOP?
Guys, this is war. Dick Cheney, very serious rancher. And you should be afraid when Dick Cheney says something, because to be fair, he could shoot you in the face. He did shoot a friend in the face, a hunting buddy. I don't know if some of you may be too young to remember this. He went hunting with a friend, shot him in the face. So Trump should be scared. All right, let's hear some. Would you like to hear some nostalgia for when Republicans were all like the sociopath that is Dick Cheney?
Compassionate conservatives.
Yeah.
Right. You know, Dick Cheney, it's been 14 years since he left. Dick Cheney was the GOP.
Is regardless of what happens in Wyoming.
But remember when Dick Cheney was the GOP? Right. You know, Dick Cheney, it's been 14 years since he left the White House. It is no longer the George W. Bush, Dick Cheney GOP. It is Donald Trump's Republican Party. Close. And we see that in the primaries. We're going to see that, I suspect, in the Wyoming primary next week.
Was that a Cheney ad? I thought it was the first Biden re-election ad.
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, the Cheneys are now in the Biden camp, and that's what is, I think, so alarming about this era, is that it's normalized the Cheneys. So now Liz Cheney and her father are liberal heroes because they don't like Trump. And it's worth thinking about why they don't like Trump. Did the Cheneys ever stand up to Trump on any of his policies that he actually did? No, because actually policy-wise, the Cheneys and Trump were actually pretty similar. Trump appointed a whole bunch of neocons that were right out of the Bush administration, including John Bolton, who was Trump's national security advisor and also served under Bush. And they carried out pretty much similar policies. This is an interesting feud, though, because Trump, when he was campaigning, pretended that he was opposed to the Cheney-Bush legacy. Like, he did criticize the Iraq War, and he pretended that he was anti-neocon, and he embarrassed the Cheneys and the Bushes because of that. He basically ended Jeb Bush's political career, and you could argue that he actually ended the Bush dynasty for good. And so that's why the Cheneys don't like Trump, not because substantively they differ on any actual policies, but because he embarrassed them. And so it's this weird little spat from two neocon factions, essentially. That's what this is about. And that's why the Cheneys are so bitter against Trump. And that's why, you know, now this Liz Cheney Wyoming race is a sort of it's a proxy for that fight. And Liz Cheney probably will lose, but luckily for her, she'll go on to the Democratic Party, maybe even be their nominee
Run for president,
in 2024.
Yeah. Well, we don't have that much time left. Do we want to show a Roger Waters clip?
Let's do it. So this is a rare dose of sanity on cable news. This was on CNN on Saturday.
And by the way, I'm adding a clip for a seminar that you can, I hope that link works. No, I guess not.
That's a long link.
It's a long link. Go to, he's doing a webinar today. I was trying to link to, but I think you can just find it if you go to, I don't know. I'll put in his tweet. All right. Sorry, Aaron, I cut you off.
Maybe actionnetwork.org. Maybe it's there. Yeah. So Roger Waters will be speaking today online at a webinar. But before then he was on CNN, and because Roger Waters is on tour right now. And apparently it's an amazing show from what I've heard. And so he was interviewed on CNN on Saturday amidst this tour. And in the short time he had, he dropped a whole lot of rare sanity for cable news.
Fueling the fire. Well, he's fueling the fire in the Ukraine for a start. That is a huge crime. Why won't the United States of America encourage Zelensky, the president, to negotiate, obviating the need for this horrendous war that's killing?
You're blaming.
We don't know how many Ukrainians.
But you're blaming the party that got invaded. Come on, you've got it reversed.
That's you know, any war. When did it start? What you need to do is look at the history, and you can say, well, it started on this day. You could say it started in 2008. Okay, this war is basically about the action and reaction of NATO pushing right up to the Russian border, which they promised they wouldn't do when Gorbachev negotiated the withdrawal of the USSR from the whole of Eastern Europe.
When you say this, then I have to say, what about our role as liberators? You of all people.
You have no role as liberators.
World War II? World War II? You
got into World War II because it's Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor. You were completely isolationist until that sad, that devastating,
I would argue we were
day
always going to get in, and that pushed us in. But thank God the United States got in, right? You lost your father in World War II. Thank God the United States.
Thank God the Russians had already won the bloody war almost by then. Don't forget, 23 million Russians died protecting you and me from the Nazi menace.
Hey, and you would think the Russians would have learned their lesson from war and wouldn't have invaded Ukraine.
Well, you with all your reading, I would suggest to you, Michael, that you go away and read a bit more and then try and figure out what the United States would do if the Chinese were putting nuclear-armed missiles into Mexico and Canada.
The Chinese are too busy encircling Taiwan as we speak. Okay?
They're not encircling Taiwan. Taiwan is part of China. And that's been absolutely accepted by the whole of the international community since 1948. And if you don't know that, you're not reading enough. Go and read about it.
Okay.
So it's also interesting that they had to go back to World War II to find the United States liberating.
Yes, the U.S. has claimed to be liberators countless times since then. Vietnam, Iraq, Panama. I mean, you name it.
Right.
But he's too embarrassed to invoke any of those. So yes, he has to go back to World War II. And even there, Roger Waters points out the fallacy in that. It's because the U.S. got into that way too late after Russia had lost over 20 million people.
Yeah.
Or the Soviet Union lost over 20 million. So yeah, that's an amazing clip from Roger firing on all cylinders. And what's interesting, Kevin Gostola posted the clip that is unedited, because basically CNN broadcast that what we just saw, but then on the web they posted the full clip without edits. And what Roger says in the unedited clip is it's even more. There's even more in it, because he mentions, for example, the Minsk Accords that was reached in Ukraine in 2015 that could have prevented this whole thing, which the U.S. did everything it could to undermine. And of course, you can't mention that on cable news. You never hear about it. So Roger brought it up, and it didn't make it to air on CNN, but they did put it up on the web. And it's amazing how we have to rely on rock stars like Roger Waters to do the job of journalists. He's being interviewed by a journalist who is sounding like a U.S. government spokesperson.
Right.
There's no difference.
But to be fair, he had him on.
Yeah, he did.
You know what I mean? As he should have, but yeah.
It's because Roger is a legend, founder of Pink Floyd. This guy's probably a fan of his music. But that's the only way we can get some truth on, is if it comes from a really accomplished musician. And amazing what Roger was able to say there in such a short amount of time.
Yeah. So shout out to Roger, who we should have back on the show. We haven't had him on in a while. We haven't had him on with you, Aaron.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, he's on tour right now, but we can try him.
Yeah. Maybe he can give us an interview live from the stage. Yeah. All righty. Well, guys, we're going to see you in a minute on Callin. Don't forget to go to Callin. And I put the link in. I put a shorter link. It's actionnetwork.org/event/webinar-with-Roger-Waters. All right.
This was a great show. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Yeah, and make sure if you didn't already hear our episode from last week, it was really good. Lindsay Snell actually on the ground in Ukraine. So why would anyone interview her? Obviously,
We've been on a tear, Katie, with our guests. We had Lindsay Snell on the ground reporting from Ukraine. Before that, we had Claire Daly, Mick Wallace.
Oh yeah, that was a great one. Yeah.
Brave European Union lawmakers. Before that, we had Michael R. Jackson, the Pulitzer, Tony
Award winning. Yeah. Should we tease who we're having this week?
Sure. Yeah.
Vijay Prashad, guys.
Vijay
Prashad, y'all.
A lot to talk about.
Get ready. Yeah. A lot to talk about. And definitely, if you can, you gotta join the Substack. UsefulIdiots.substack.com. By the way, allow me to just say one thing. someone wrote in the chat, Katie's the new Kim on Rising, but I just want to clarify on the Hill that I was starting to guest host before Kim left, lest anyone think I'm her replacement. She left unrelated to the fact that I was guest co-hosting. Yeah.
Well, and you're doing a great job.
Thank
I've been
you.
enjoying your segments.
Thanks. Yeah, and I mentioned our show on Rising. So yeah. All right. Well, we will see you at Colin right now.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube at youtube.com/usefulidiots.